damage.
We have with us Behnam Taleblu and Camilla and i24 to talk about this. Let's start with you, Camilla. This American show of force, how do you see this?
Hello to everyone. Thank you for hosting, dear Jacob, and good seeing you, dear Behnam. There is two stories side by side were carrying out at the region. And as I can see, one side is the story of Iran and Saudi Arabia's normalizations of the relations, the peace talk with Houthis in Yemen, and all these developments which did promise the stability and peace in the region. And the other side, which is parallel to this, is Iran nuclear program, which it hasn't been sorted out, and still Americans and the Western powers has questions, asking Iran to allow the IAEA inspectors goes and take the cameras on, reduce the uranium enriching the high grades, and many other stories at that side, which Americans clearly said if Iran wouldn't open up to any talks to sort out the issues, and also if Iran wants to make the nuclear bomb, they have a plan, and this plan is a serious plan to attack Iran nuclear facilities. Still, with this ongoing peace talks, regional talks between Saudi and Iran, we haven't heard Iran open up the talks about its nuclear program. And in my opinion, seeing this U.S. navies in the Persian Gulf maybe is a precaution of in case if any attack carried by the Israeli or the American against Iran nuclear facilities, they would be prepared for an action. Maybe Iran wants to close the Strait of Hormuz, or like the previous years attack some of the commercial ships or the carrying oil ships. Any of these scenarios could be happen.
Behnam, special importance to this move by the Americans before we move to other angles of this area?
Well, pleasure to be with you, and greetings, Camilla, and to your viewers. Listen, in short, this is not a surprise for Washington, which has traditionally tried to use surface and subsurface vessels like ships, frigates, carriers, and now submarines to try to send a deterrent message to the Islamic Republic. We all know that even though CENTCOM is very slowly transitioning towards unmanned assets, in particular those sail drones that Iran had captured a few years ago, it still continues to bring big military hardware into the region to try to make the Islamic Republic think twice about a narrative that is almost omnipresent in Iranian hardline media, which is that America is a paper tiger. It is on its way out of the region. So no matter your view on the Saudi-Iran-China deal, on the future of the Iran nuclear program, the Americans are at least trying to, in my view, with some of these deployments and some of these military drills in other parts of the Middle East, trying to send a deterrent message to the Islamic Republic. The challenge with signaling, of course, is that it has to be mutually intelligible.
Now, a Saudi delegation is in Tehran to discuss reopening diplomatic missions with Iran after 7 years. Is this shaping up to be a deep cooperation with long-term influence on the region? Let's start with you, Behnam, this time.
So I think the Saudis are well aware of the history of animosity and the Islamic Republic targeting them. I think they were driven to this by some kind of political necessity, and I think they know that ultimately the Islamic Republic can do a 180 or a U-turn on this or any of the other kind of things it may have promised in the peace talks vis-a-vis Houthis, normalization, potentially sharing the region or elsewhere. All of this stuff, however, needs to be a wake-up call for America to know that it needs to repair its relationships with its partners, because its partners will continue to engage in this kind of hedging behavior if they don't feel as if they have some kind of cover from their adversaries by their patrons. So in this sense, I wouldn't overread it, but the Iranian press is now saying following this trip, there may be a technical delegation being sent to Saudi Arabia next week to do the same kind of meetings about opening up an embassy as well. On the surface, proponents of diplomacy may take this as a win, but for the Islamic Republic, style matters just as much as substance. So I would caution everyone who is welcoming these diplomatic moves.
Camilla, is this a new love story, or they should still, the Saudis, stay and be suspicious of the Iranians?
Saudis needed to have these relations with Tehran to be mended for certain reasons. They have this 2030s economical project, which it needed, have peace and security in the region. And we understand that what a dirty game the regime is playing in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen to destabilize the region. So Saudi Arabia couldn't wait forever for the Americans to make peace in Yemen, which President Biden haven't even taken any little steps since he became the president to negotiate between Saudis and Yemenis, nor the United Nations succeeded to grant peace to Yemen. So Saudi Arabia is taking a firm step by negotiating with the Iranians, and I can see there are lots of unhappiness from the American side towards this decision. We heard that clearly. President Biden and his administration, they were very precautious about this rapprochement between Tehran and Saudis. But at the same time, there is another scenario here. We heard of this surprise news of OPEC cutting its production, which it raised the oil prices in the United States last Thursday. Here we can see there is maybe Saudi Arabia is rising as a real major hub of the power, not only in the region, even globally, to play a big role making peace in the region, talking to Tehran. Maybe even, I wouldn't be surprised if Saudi Arabia had some signals from the Iranians over its nuclear program too. Maybe the next step after Iran completing its promises towards Yemen and peace talk with Saudi Arabia, maybe the next step, we were hearing Saudi Arabia is putting its steps up to negotiate between Tehran and the West over its nuclear program. Here is lots of challenges, in my opinion, for the United States, rather than we say if Iranian cannot fulfill its promises. Iran also desperately needed this peace negotiation to walking out from the isolation internationally suffers. At least it can make this relation with the regional countries better, which it has to be headed by Saudi Arabia.
Behnam, with the backing of Russia and China, and what we've seen now with Saudi Arabia and other moves, are the Iranians on a roll, as they say?
Well, listen, even though the Islamic Republic was suffering from significant regional and geopolitical isolation, those were trends, those were things that they had learned to fight and try to co-opt over the past 4 decades. This diplomatic pressure, economic pressure is something the Islamic Republic is no stranger to. But what it's trying to do now is trying to burst out of a bubble in light of recent events such as the Abraham Accords. So, one of the taglines that the Islamic Republic is trying to solidify with this, potential reopening of embassies in Riyadh and in Tehran is to say that Tehran beat Jerusalem to Riyadh. Tehran beat Jerusalem to Riyadh, trying to say that it's breaking out of the box of the Abraham Accords, that all the talk about the GCC friendship with Israel is much more limited. So it's trying to turn a little bit of a molehill into a mountain. But when you bring in the other factors, Russia's increasing interest in the region, China's increasing geostrategic interest in the region, this really can become a molehill.
Right.
This really
at this
can
point,
become a mountain,
we'll leave it at that because we have to take a break. I thank you very much, both of you. And speaking of which, when we come back, Iran is pushing its big brother crackdown